I must say that after I found out what fucked me up, I got pissed. I cut off my ties to that sick prankster. My friend was throwing a Halloween party. He said costume only. Don't worry about drugs, alcohol, etc. My girlfriend already felt threatened by me going without her since she had to work that night. The house was only lit up by black lights. We smoked a little bit of chronic weed to shake off the edge of a bad day. About 30 minutes later, we all grabbed a cup and scooped some cold tea from the punch bowl. I cannot remember if it was 15 minutes later or 45 minutes later, but I ran to the toilet bowl and puked my guts out. As soon as I felt the dry heaves fading, the floor was crawling. I heard many whispers, static voices, and faint screams. I opened the bathroom door and no one was there. I remembered everyone was outside in the backyard partying. When I got out back, everyone who was there either were laying in a comatose daze or were in small groups talking as if they were on helium. Laughter and crying erupted at the same time. I was in control after messing with PCP, LSD, X, DMT, and various hallucinogens. I only felt like I was going to get sick again. Sure enough, I puked all the water I downed an hour later. Some girl who also lived there felt sorry for me and took me to her room. As I lay in a stupor delirium, she was forcing her tongue down my throat. I was too weak to push her off. I couldn't feel her giving me head. I couldn't tell if I was erect or not, but I felt a cold tingling sensation when she sucked harder. She wiped her mouth off and asked if I liked the nightshade I was so fucked up on. Her eyes looked transparent and geometrical. I felt a weird rush, and this must have been 3 hours into the trip. I lost memory after that, but vividly remember puking constantly at 7 a.m. somewhere downtown and having a hell of a time finding my car. I rested the entire day and felt like I was going to die. I don't think it was cool not telling the guests what they were on. My experience was mixed. The aftermath isn't worth discussing. I lost a girlfriend over it. I also lost memory over it. This last Saturday, me and my friend picked 4 leaves off a belladonna plant in my front yard. We boiled this in a pot of boiling water and made 2 water bottles full, one for each of us. We drank 1 bottle each. We felt nothing after 30 minutes, so I went home and he remained at his house. I started tripping so hard when I got home, and my balance was completely off. This trip was not like acid. I have done acid way over 20 times, and this was too real. I first noticed I was tripping when I went off at the reflection in the mirror because I didn't know it was me, and I thought the person was mocking me. Then, I kept putting my hand to my face and acted as I was talking on the phone, and in my mind, I heard the other person too. I also kept seeing people in my living room, and for some reason, there were squirrels everywhere. Understand? I did not realize this was fake. This was completely real in my state of mind. At 3 a.m, I got a phone call, a real one, from my friend's parents. He was in a coma. Apparently, his parents came home to find him banging his head against the wall. He thought it was his pillow, and they pumped his stomach, and he was in a coma until Monday. The hallucinations I saw were unreal, but at the same time seemed perfectly real. At one point, I called my girlfriend at 4 a.m. to tell her I just got back from my stepmom's house, and I was going back over there. All in all, the trip was horrible, too real, too strong. The belladonnas I used were a string of plants brought over from Cuba, supposed to be the strongest in the world. The trip lasted 3 days, the full effect of it, and I still do not have my vision back. My friend is also okay now. He stopped tripping yesterday, and his vision is pretty bad too. I advise everyone to stay away from this drug. This can and will kill you. If we drank one more sip each, we both would have been dead. This is not something to fool around with. Be careful, be safe, and good luck for all you people who want to take this stupid risk. I read hyoscyamine can help induce vivid dreams. I decided to try, so I ordered a pack of belladonna seeds from the nursery. I had read another person's experience who said they had tried 200 seeds with no perceptible effect. Thankfully, I am conservative enough to start with minute amounts, and I don't trust anyone's reports. I wanted to start with 20 seeds and increase by 10 each night until I realized my dreams, but I settled on starting with 10. I had a cold at the time, and I also took 2 extra cold tablets with phenylephrine. About 30 minutes later, I distinctly felt poisoned. I had tingling in my legs and felt like I was losing the ability to operate them. They were quivering and weak. My vision blurred, and my body began dumping liquids through frequent urination. My heart raced and thumped. I took out my scale and weighed out 10 seeds. 10 seeds weighed 25 milligrams. I have read that 10 milligrams of hyoscyamine is considered lethal, and 10 milligrams of atropine is incapacitating. Seeds should contain alkaloids in the amount of 0.4% of seed weight, but I felt much worse than what that amount should produce. So I estimated that if the seeds contained a whopping 50% alkaloids, which is impossible, the amount would be over 10 milligrams. But my situation felt serious enough to get ready to head to the hospital for an antidote. I waited it out though, and 4 hours later, I was off to sleep, scared myself and my wife. It's not a nice experience to feel poison. In hindsight, it was probably the atropine that made me feel like that. I live in Yorkshire, England, and I found belladonna plants growing when I was out walking. I collected a few leaves off each plant, the best looking ones, with no holes and good color. I dried these out quickly over a fluorescent light. The first thing I tried was smoking it in a pipe. Nothing happened. Then I tried drinking a tea with 1 gram of the drug. I got a very dry mouth for a few hours. Nothing else. Yesterday, I took 2 grams in a tea. It was the strongest buzz I have ever had. At first, I felt dizzy and had no balance. Then my pupils became dilated, then it got really strong. I kept getting a feeling of being electrocuted when this happened. I lost control of my legs and had to lay down in the street for an hour. I had very strong hallucinations and voices in my head, and the electricity rushes happened very frequently. I was very frightened. I believe that this drug is much stronger than acid. It did not have a stimulating effect, so I could eventually get to sleep. The next day, I still have loss of visual accommodation and the muscle at the back of my throat is still paralyzed, but I am much better off than last night. I cannot recommend this drug. It is just too strong. It has only been 6 days since my first and last belladonna experience. Having read up extensively on this plant, I was quite excited to find a large bush of deadly nightshade at a local park, and as I grabbed a twig to examine the purple berries, I squeezed the contents into my eye. It began to sting. I licked my finger, stupid idea, and rubbed furiously at my eyeball. Before walking to the park, I had drunk around 5 standard drinks, so I was pleasantly inebriated as I walked home after the incident with the berries. 15 minutes after absorption. As I walked home, I began to feel very, very drunk. My head felt extremely heavy, and I was stumbling quite badly. However, I continued to drink when I got home. 30 minutes after absorption. My head is now extremely heavy, feel drunker than I've ever been before. I was hallucinating very badly. I saw myself, my own body, and walked around myself and screamed at myself, kicked at myself, which was actually a wall, then became disinterested as my phone was ringing. I answered it, and it was my friend. I told him via lots of screaming that I had eaten magic mushrooms and I felt funny. Then another friend rang and I felt out of control, and I told her I had taken heroin. 50 minutes after absorption. A dog ran out in front of me. It was my old dog, which had long since passed away. For some reason, I thought this was real. It seemed so real. My head was full of static noise as I followed my dead dog down to the park, where I had originally taken the deadly nightshade into my eye. As I walked, my legs would fall out from under me, causing me to go crashing into the road, but my dog would always wait for me. An hour and a half after absorption. When I reached the park, I was hallucinating widely, although it still seemed normal. I've taken a lot of hallucinogens, LSD, mescaline, DMT, etc., but these visions were nothing like them. For one, they were a change of the entire scenery, and to me, they seemed real. There was lightning all around me. The sky was ripped apart and clouds sweeping by quickly. They were tinged with red. All around me, the normally deserted park is filled with people. Horrible gray shadows with black holes for eyes. There are thousands of them. The trees are dripping with blood, and the ground is littered with body parts. These people are laughing at me, but I can only hear them in my head. They scream at me. Horrible things about how the universe is coming to an end. I remember grabbing my head and screaming. 2 hours after absorption. This account is from my friends who found me. At this point, I no longer have a recollection of what happened. I was found at the park, screaming in some unknown language at the top of my voice. I was deliberately hurling myself towards the ground, into trees and walls, and attempting to throw myself into the river. They called the ambulance, who then called the cops. They spent at least half an hour trying to settle me down, but I was confused and violent. The police handcuffed me and tried to hold me down, but I threw them off. The ambulance officers shot me up 6 times with a sedative, which finally brought me down. I spent 3 days in an induced coma and 5 days in intensive care. This is where I woke up having no idea what had happened or who I was. The Australian doctors had never seen a case of belladonna atropine poisoning before and decided that an opiate derivative and general anesthetic was a good treatment. Belladonna was a descent into absolute madness. To this day, my vision has not yet recovered, blurry and unable to focus. Of all the drugs I've used, belladonna was the strongest and most terrifying. I would never recommend this plant to anyone who doesn't want to wipe themselves out of the point of dying. It wasn't trippy, enlightening, or fun. It was the most horrific experience I've ever had before. There are far better and safer alternatives to this plant. Belladonna, I would not risk it.